Alleluia. Om Mani Padme Om. Allah Satnam.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Parvyn Kaur Bennett. She's a dancer and a singer, Australian-born of Indian descent. And last week we covered the history of Parvyn getting to this point. Now we're going to talk about the dancing and the singing, and I think Kathak is the style.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Kathak is a North Indian classical style. Mm-hmm. It originates from the Rajasthan area, from the desert area, and it's a form of art which has, there are references to it in texts which are over 2,000 years old, about 2,500 years. The word and the art form is there. Mm-hmm. And it was originally formed as a type of devotion that was performed in temples. And the word Kathak comes from the word katha, which means to tell a story. So katha is the storytelling. Even in Sikh gurdwaras you get katha, which is the storytelling part of it. Mm-hmm. And so it's a form of dance which is like miming. And without words you use your expressions, your hands, your eyes, your mouth to mime out these stories without using words. But then often it is performed to singers and live musicians which will be singing the songs that you're depicting with your movement.
Okay.
And so you take on character roles, and a lot of the traditional stories are from the Hindu religion. A lot of stories about Krishna. Radha and Krishna is a very famous story. Mm. And it just goes on. You can also be depicting scenes of different festivals, like the Diwali festival or the Holi festival, and so you're acting out those scenes. And then later on it was influenced heavily by the invaders of India, so the Persians and things like that, and it kind of broadened out to be also encompass poetry of love and of sadness. And there's a style of poetry called ghazal, which is performed in India, and so now there's Kathak dancing that goes along to ghazals. Mm-hmm. And it was then performed for the kind of princes and royal courts and things like that.
Is it both male and female?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if you try and think about what it looks like, flamenco, they say, originates from Kathak. So it's very rhythmic footwork, where you wear up to 100 bells around each ankle, and you do the rhythmic footwork like the takita dekita tak tak takita dekita takita dekita with your feet, and then the upper body. Do you know how the flamenco is very kind of fiery?
Yes.
And obviously the gypsies have had a very a rough time, and so there's that kind of, whereas Kathak is a little bit more fluid and graceful, a bit softer. But it's the same rhythmic patterns, and also the same sort of hand movements and the fluidity, the very fast spins. So that's what it looks like.
And so the music, the instrumentation that's behind that, what's that comprising of?
Mostly singing, and then the tabla. Originally the pakawaj, so the tabla is the Indian drums.
Yes.
And the same rhythmic patterns that I would be performing with my feet would be performed in the tabla. It's the same language that is spoken. So you actually learn how to speak the dance before you learn how to dance it. So you learn how it fits into the rhythmic cycles, and you learn the ball. Ball means to speak. So it's accompanied by the tabla, and then the sitar, bansuri, what other melodic instruments want to go on top of that.
Right. Yes, the tabla's been referred to as talking drum.
Yes.
I think. Yes, for that reason. So this sounds like a pretty intense type of dancing.
Yeah.
There's some sort of guru type training in this, isn't there? It's fairly intense.
Yeah. It's an art form which you spend years and years understanding and learning, and it's like with classical ballet and classical Western dance. It's got a lot involved in mastering it and learning it. And so I have a teacher, a guru in Ahmedabad in the state of Gujarat in India. And I go to her as often as I can to learn from her. When I was growing up, we didn't have that. We didn't have teachers that could teach us that sort of thing. My mum she tried very hard to make us learn what she could from people that were travelling through. So we learnt Bharatanatyam, which is a South Indian classical dance, which is the very rigid sort of thing. But again, it's the storytelling and learning how to use the eyes and the face and the expression.
Okay. Yep.
And then when I was about 10, my mum sent us to Singapore to do an intensive course on Kathak. And then it was only after I finished high school and pretty much finished uni as well, that's when I started travelling back to India to get the real essence of this art form, which has been passed down for generations. A lot of the Indian art, music and dance is passed down as a family lineage.
Okay.
So traditionally you would learn from your father, or if you were an outsider, you would live with your guru, and it's called Guru Shisha learning. So it's more like learning how to live your life. It's a way of living, and it's a way of devoting your whole being to art. And you pick that up from being a shadow of your teacher, because they are the example that you are trying to be like. So in that way, it's very much the same as spiritual teaching, and it is about devoting your life to something, and having that commitment, because it's hard work. I would spend hours in a day just stamping my feet or turning around in circles to a point where I would just be so nauseous but it's that dedication.
It certainly sounds a little bit deeper than learning to tap dance. That's
tap dancing's hard.
It doesn't have
and some of the
spiritual component.
Well, anyone who is that dedicated to their art has to really love what they do. And
of course,
when I watch people like Gene Kelly from back in the day, and
he was good, but he was also good because he knew about time.
Excellent.
We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Parvyn Kaur Bennett. Parvyn, you mentioned something about being a singer. Now, I'm not going to spring this on you too hard, but could you do just a little traditional song?
I'll do it's a shloka about Krishna, and done in the traditional Khayal North Indian vocal style.
All right.
Here we go. Kasturi tilakam lalat patale vakshastale kaustubham Nasagre varamoktikam karatale venu kare kankanam Sarvange Hari Chandanam Sulalitam cha muktavali gopasti parivastita vijayate Gopal Chudamani.
Thank you, Parvyn.
You're very welcome.
To do that a cappella was fantastic. Thank you. Now, the language, that was in Sanskrit, was it?
Yeah, it's a traditional shloka which is describing different attributes of Lord Krishna.
Right.
And so his scent, his hue, his glow about him. Krishna is used very often in Indian art, both all the painting, the music, the poetry, because he is very much the god of love.
Yes.
And it's just that beauty which is inspired by Krishna, which you see a lot.
Well, see, the thing which stood out in that song, apart from the quality of your voice, but the intonation was clearly important. So how do you learn that? Is that guru-driven as well, or is you need to truly understand the words, etc., to do that?
No, what is for me the highest thing is it's not about the words that I'm singing. It's about the vocal quality,
right?
The flexibility within the vocal cords, the control that you can achieve, and the speed and all those agility, all those sorts of things that is achievable through the voice.
Yes.
And I find that in Indian music most, which is why I study it so much. And you get there by hours and hours of practice. You start off imitating your teacher.
Yes.
And so the way that you learn is they will sing something to you and then you imitate it back to them.
Right.
So first you become the parrot, they say. So you're just hearing it and you're over and over again, you're trying to imitate it. That's how you can't sing something if you haven't been able to hear it first. No. So the main thing is just hearing it, and trying. And I've got recordings of when I would be learning with my teacher in India, and at the time you think you're doing great, but then you hear them back and it's very much a process which you develop. Yes. And you learn and you become more aware of what you're singing. And it starts off with just singing the one pure note, Om.
Yes.
And you start off, I've had lessons up to an hour, which is just Om. Yes. And they're singing lessons.
Right.
And my teacher would be singing it to me and then I sing it back. But I've obviously not maintained that constant pitch,
yes.
that constant airflow, that control enough that he's gone, no, we just need to do this. And you need to get your actual tone right of your voice before you can learn how to do all that twiddly stuff.
Right.
Learn how to sing a note properly.
Yeah. So is there a component of sacredness behind that?
Very much so.
Yes. So.
It's all about devotion. Indian music and dance is all about devotion, and it's all about something which is much bigger than yourself, and it's a gift that you've got that you harness. And the most amazing musicians are ones that are not singing as entertainment, they're singing as part of their devotion to this wondrous universe. That's what it's about.
And so even though you sang that for us a cappella, does that sit over instruments? Or is it
something like that would be performed over just a tanpura, which is the drone. Right. So it's a 4-stringed instrument, and you just play it and it repeats over and over again, and you pitch yourself to that tanpura, and then you go from there. You let the spirit fly.
Yes.
My dancing teacher, do we have to cut off for now?
Yes, so When you talk about it sitting over top of that droning bass line, it can grow, it can elevate into a sacred expression.
It should be a sacred expression from the very moment that you're opening your mouth, because what is sacred expression? It's being totally aware and having purpose to what it is that you're focusing your energy into, and bringing yourself down to that point of complete awareness.
And my awareness is spot on. We're out of time. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Parvyn Kaur Bennett. Parvyn, over the last two segments, we've been exploring the sacred nature and divine nature, in fact, of Indian singing and dancing. Take that a bit further for us. It's clearly very, very deep, and it divides between the south and the north. They're quite different. So,
I think all art has that kind of sacredness in it, whether it's Bach or whether it's classical Indian music. It's that devotion and dedication of putting your energy and time into something. And with that, there's a lot of patience which is required to get to that level, a lot of discipline, a lot of focusing of the mind, awareness, intention, all those sorts of things. Control over your body for a singer, over your vocal cords, and the creativity which comes, like, it's a difficult question to say, where does that come from when you start improvising, for example?
yes.
And for me, that's what Indian classical music has given me, but I think it's a lot broader than that. And it can be related to any form of dance, whether it's ballet or... and then, yes, like you were saying, it's the same fundamental philosophy. Even in India itself, there's so much variation from the north to the south, how that has been translated within the body, within the language, within the styles of music. In the north of India, there's the Khayal, which is more the Bollywood influence, so that's kind of the language of Hindi. And Sanskrit is used quite a lot. In the south, it's the Carnatic style of music, which is very different to listen to. The way they improvise within melody is a lot more structured than with the North Indian classical style. The rhythmic patterns that they use are very different. Like I did before, the difference of the dance, which is that really sort of straight thing, but it's all this control over angles and body, whereas I might be doing that sort of stuff and having those sorts of kind of strict hand movements, whereas the North Indian style is that fluid type of thing, but it's all connection and control over your body. It's the same with athletics, with the elite athletes of this world. That, I mean, when you meet people like that, they're fairly chilled out.
Yes, yes.
They're normally fairly kind of so in tune with their own bodies, because they've just spent hours and hours with just their bodies as their tool of creativity, I guess. And I find that from all sorts of things, like yoga, for example.
Yes.
It's yet another form of meditation and physical activity that I use to settle my mind and to have complete control over the extremities. Like, this is my vessel that I feel like I need to, one, take care of, put the right things into, eat the right food, eat the right amounts of food. I think that as a society we are so over abundant with the access to food that we've become quite lazy in that way.
Yes.
And it's all those sorts of things that Sikhism has taught me right from the start, and I'm just trying to embody that. I'm trying to be that example of unconditional love in this world, because I think that's the only way to be, and you can't be sprouting or preaching all this stuff without really doing it yourself, I think. So I'm just trying to do the best that I can from what I've learnt.
And doing a very good job of it.
Thank you.
But it seems that it's there's part of being deeply connected with the essence. In all of the things that you were talking about, as you say, the outcome for an athlete is what they're focusing on, and for the singer and the dancer, the outcome is the true sacred interpretation of whatever the dance is or the piece is that they're interpreting at the time. Would that be so? It's an awareness. I am here for this purpose. Is the purpose never slips away? Is that what holds you?
Well, we can start talking about like what is the purpose, and for me, when it comes to the performance and practice of music and dance, is trying to attain a level of perfection.
Yes. Yeah.
And at each time, I am just trying to perfect it more and more and more.
That's right.
And so you become that image of that perfection, which I find exhilarating.
Yes, exactly.
It's a great purpose for me, and it's what I've decided to dedicate this life to.
Yes, to focus to that escalating essence.
And I think when
perfection.
people see that performance, and when I'm teaching as well, they get that sort of that vibe from it. I think, and it's inspiring, and also hopefully when I'm performing, I am giving people that sense of peace and oneness that I have to feel to be able to give that performance.
Yes.
And they come along with me in that journey.
Yes, it's a total. And we don't have a lot of time, but is there just one single passage, one phrase which you may dance, which just goes like that with you, which makes you chilled?
Just a note. It doesn't have to be a phrase. It doesn't have to be something which is written by anyone. It's just the freedom in sound and in improvised movement as well. Like some of the most exhilarating times I find even in audiences is when you're dancing along to it and you're just improvising your dance. You're expressing yourself with total freedom and carefreeness. Like, I don't. It's always.
It's sort of the touch of the essence when that happens. Parvyn, look, it's just been so interesting talking through, and we could actually go on for weeks and weeks and weeks, but we do have to have another life as well. But thanks so much for making yourself available, and good luck with your escalation to achieve the perfect dance and the perfect note. Well,
I hope that each moment that I am actually fully aware in what I'm doing, I'm achieving that every single time.
I'm sure you will be. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. We'll see you then.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om.